Welcome to Doctorates of the Absurd, your provider of belief on demand.
It's great to be here, and today we are tackling a book that I honestly think acts as a kind of Rorschach test for whoever reads it.
A Rorschach test, how so?
Well, depending on your politics, your outlook, this is either the most inspiring roadmap for the future you've ever read, or it's a completely terrifying delusion. There's not much middle ground.
I absolutely felt that whiplash reading it. We're talking about fully automated luxury communism. A Manifesto by Aaron Bastani. And look, I know that title. It sounds like a meme from a Reddit thread.
Right. It sounds like a joke.
It doesn't sound serious?
It actually was a meme for a while. But what Bastani did is he took it and he built this really serious and I think very provocative economic argument around it.
Right. And before we get into, the robots and the asteroid mine, and believe me, we will get there, I want to start with the feeling that this book is trying to address. Because I think everyone listening right now, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, has probably felt this. It's what we're calling the existential itch.
The existential itch. I like that. It's the sense that something has gone fundamentally wrong with the timeline.
Exactly. It's this weird paradox where, we have iPhones and streaming services and you can get anything delivered to your door tomorrow. So on one level, we're living in the future.
Technically.
But at the same time, it feels like the future's been canceled. It feels like we're working harder than our parents did. But, housing is unaffordable for so many people. Public services are crumbling.
The climate is obviously destabilizing in terrifying ways.
Yeah, it feels like we're running on a treadmill that's just slowly tilting upward.
That's a great metaphor for it. And Bastani, he has a name for this. He calls it the Great Disorder.
The Great Disorder.
And his argument is that we aren't just having a run of bad luck. This isn't just a blip. He says we're living through 5 converging crises all at once.
5. Okay, so what are you mentioned the climate. That's got to be the big one.
That's the umbrella over everything, yeah. But then you have resource scarcity. Then there's the demographic time bomb of, aging populations in a lot of the developed world.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Global poverty is still a massive issue. And then the 5th one, the one that really powers this book, is the rise of the machine's technological unemployment.
And the usual reaction to all of this, to this great disorder, especially from, the establishment or even the mainstream environmental movement, is basically the party's over.
Right. Tighten your belts. Learn to live with less.
Yeah, the dominant story is that the future will be defined by scarcity. And that if we want to save the planet, we have to consume less, travel less, and just accept a lower standard of living. It's a politics of managed decline.
A retreat.
But Bastani just comes in and flips the entire table. He asks this incredibly provocative question, which is, what if the robot stealing our jobs is actually a good thing?
Which is not how we're conditioned to think about it at all.
Not at all. And what if the solution to climate change isn't having less, but having way, way more?
And that is the absolute core premise of the book. He's arguing that we are right on the verge of a historic transition, a shift from a world that has always been organized around scarcity to a world organized around what he calls extreme supply.
Extreme supply.
And he believes that if we handle this transition correctly, if we embrace the technology in the right way, we could be living in a world where work is optional and luxury is universal.
It sounds like pure science fiction. And he knows it because he actually starts the book with these little fictional vignettes. I actually love them. They really help ground the theory.
You do. They make it feel immediate.
You've got this character, Yang, in China, working in a factory, and she's just terrified of the robotic arm working next to her because she knows it's coming for her job.
And then you have Chris, who's like this tech investor watching SpaceX rockets and pouring his money into asteroid mining startups.
Right. And Federica in London, shopping with an AI assistant that knows what she wants before she even does.
And Bastani's point with these characters is that the technology for this luxury future, it's not 100 years away. It's already here. It's just that right now it's being used to make us feel anxious or to monitor us or to make our jobs more precarious.
Yeah, it's being deployed within the old system. And that brings us to what he calls the third disruption, which we'll get to. But first, let's talk about the villain of this story. Because every good manifesto needs an enemy.
It does.
And in this book, the enemy isn't just, greedy CEOs or the rich. It's something more subtle. It's a specific way of thinking.
He's targeting an idea that he calls capitalist realism. And he's borrowing this term from the late cultural theorist Mark Fisher.
Okay, so what is capitalist realism?
It's best summed up by Fisher's famous quote. It is easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism.
Wow. That quote always gives me a chill because it's so true.
It is.
We watch movies about the apocalypse constantly. Zombies, asteroids, climate collapse, nuclear war. We can picture the end of everything in vivid high definition.
We pay money to see it.
Yeah, but try to picture an economic system that isn't based on profit and wages and markets. For most people, it's just a blank screen. It feels impossible.
Because the system presents itself as a law of nature, like gravity. And Bastani argues that neoliberalism, which has been the dominant economic model for the last 40 years, absolutely relies on maintaining what he calls artificial scarcity.
Artificial scarcity, meaning we could have abundance, but we choose not to.
Precisely. His point is that we actually have the capacity to feed, house, and educate everyone on the planet right now. The resources exist, but the market mechanism requires scarcity to function.
Right. If everyone has a house, then housing has no value as a financial asset. If food is free, the whole agricultural market collapses.
So the system has to enforce rationing. It has to keep things scarce to keep prices up and to keep the profit motive alive.
He uses a really specific example of the system failing that I hadn't thought about in years. The collapse of Carillion.
Ah, yes. For listeners outside the UK, Carillion was this massive outsourcing giant, a private company. They handled everything. School lunches, maintaining hospitals, even building new railway lines.
And this is all based on the neoliberal argument, the dogma, that private companies are always more efficient than the state. The market knows best.
But Carillion collapsed basically overnight in 2018. It just imploded. And it turned out they weren't experts in building things or providing services. They were experts in financial engineering.
They were good at winning contracts and paying out dividends.
Exactly. They were privatizing all the profits and socializing all the risks. And when they went under, the public, the taxpayers, had to step in immediately to pick up the pieces just to keep schools and hospitals running.
So Bastani uses this as Exhibit A. He says, look, this outsourcing machine is broken. It doesn't create abundance. It creates fragility, and ultimately it extracts wealth.
And it creates misery for the people who rely on those services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the alternative he's presenting isn't just, let's go back to the state running everything like it's 1970. He's talking about something much more radical.
Because the stakes are so high.
The stakes are incredibly high. He paints this stark binary choice. It's either fully automated luxury communism or automated barbarism.
And automated barbarism is the default path. It's the nightmare scenario.
So what does that look like?
Imagine we keep our current economic system where you absolutely need a job to survive, to pay for rent and food. But at the same time, we keep developing AI and robotics that make more and more human jobs obsolete.
Okay, so you have this ever-growing part of the population that is just surplus, so they're unneeded by the economy.
Exactly. The rich don't need the poor for labor anymore. They have robots. They have AI. So what happens? The wealthy retreat into their gated communities, or, he references the film Elysium.
Right, the space station for the 1%.
They retreat into these golden ghettos, and the rest of humanity is left to rot in a climate-ravaged wasteland fighting over scraps. That, he argues, is where we are heading if we don't change the political and economic system. It's the default trajectory.
That is terrifyingly plausible.
Yeah, so okay, let's look at let's get into the engine room of his argument. How does he actually think we can get to this Star Trek future? It all rests on this idea of the third disruption.
Right, and to really get the third disruption, you have to look at the first two. They were monumental shifts in human history.
Okay, lay them out for us.
The first disruption was agriculture. Happened about 12,000 years ago. It gave us surplus food. Suddenly, not everyone had to spend all day hunting and gathering. It allowed for specialization, for cities, for civilization as we know it.
A huge deal, the foundation of everything.
Okay, what's number two?
The second disruption. Think the steam engine, electricity. The Industrial Revolution, starting in the 18th century, this replaced human and animal muscle power with mechanical power. Another complete transformation of society.
And so now, we are living through the third disruption, information.
But, and this is the crucial leap that Bastani makes, it's not just about the internet or social media. He argues that the fundamental logic of information, where copying something costs nothing, is now starting to apply to the physical world, to energy, to labor, and even to matter itself.
Okay, that's a big claim. He talks about the rule that information wants to be free. I think we all get that in the digital world.
Yeah.
If I have an MP3 file or a PDF of a book on my hard drive, it costs me literally $0 to make a copy and send it to you. The marginal cost of production is zero.
Correct. And capitalism absolutely hates zero marginal cost. It breaks the whole system. You can't set a price for something that is infinitely abundant and free to copy.
So how does that apply to, say, a car or a sandwich?
That's the core of the argument. Bastani says that the key inputs of the physical economy, energy, labor, and raw materials are all becoming information goods. They're starting to follow the same cost curves as computer chips.
Okay, let's break those down one by one, because this is where the details get really wild, and I think a lot of summaries just skip over them. Let's start with energy.
This is maybe the most important piece. It's based on the shift from thinking about energy as a fuel to thinking about it as a technology.
What's the difference?
Coal is a fuel. You dig it up, you burn it, and then it's gone. You have to go dig up more. It is inherently scarce and finite. Solar panels, on the other hand, are a technology. They are basically semiconductors, just like the chips in your phone.
And because they're a technology, they follow an exponential improvement curve, like Moore's law for computers.
Exactly. He cites something called Swanson's law.
I've heard of that.
It's the observation that the price of solar photovoltaic modules drops by about 20% for every doubling of cumulative shipped volume. And this is held remarkably true for decades. Solar is getting cheaper and better exponentially.
But you always hear the counter-argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but solar's inefficient, or the sun doesn't shine at night.
That's thinking linearly. Bastani's point is that we are not running out of energy. We are drowning in it. He points out that the sun hits the Earth every day with about 6,000 times the amount of energy that all of humanity consumes.
6,000 times?
The problem was never a lack of energy. It was that we lacked an efficient bucket to catch it. And now, the bucket, the solar panel, and the battery is getting exponentially cheaper. As the cost of panels trends towards zero, the cost of the energy they produce also trends towards zero.
And if energy becomes essentially free, my God, everything changes.
Yeah, everything. Desalinating seawater to create infinite fresh water becomes cheap. Powering vertical farms to grow food anywhere becomes cheap. Recycling materials becomes cheap.
It just ripples through the entire supply chain.
It's the foundation for abundance in everything else.
Okay, but hold on. Even if energy is free, you still need people to, build the solar farms, run the vertical farms, design the products. You still need labor.
And that brings us to the second pillar of the third disruption. Labor is also becoming information. This is the AI revolution.
So it's the same logic. If you spend millions of dollars training an AI to diagnose a disease from an X-ray, or to code a website, or to pilot a humanoid robot to build a house.
Once that software is written, the cost of replicating that laborer is effectively zero.
I can copy the Dr. AI software 1,000,000 times for free. And it can work 24/7 without getting tired.
Right. And labor costs are the biggest single expense in almost every industry. So if AI and automation drive labor costs towards zero, and cheap solar drives energy costs towards zero,
then the cost of producing almost any good or service plummets towards zero. The final product becomes effectively free.
but you still need the raw materials.
Exactly my thought. You can't download steel. You can't 3D print gold out of thin air. There are physical limits.
This is the most sci-fi part of the book, but Bastani argues it's much closer than we think. He's talking about asteroid mining.
Okay. I admit, this is where he started to lose me a little bit when I first read it. It sounds so far-fetched.
He focuses on one specific asteroid, which I looked up, and it's real. NASA has a mission plan for it. It's called 16 Psyche.
16 Psyche. And what's so special about it?
It's a metallic asteroid floating out in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. It's thought to be the exposed core of an ancient failed planet, and it's made almost entirely of iron, nickel, and precious metals like gold and platinum.
And there's a lot of it.
An unbelievable amount. He does the math in the book. The estimated value of the metals in just that one asteroid is something like 10,000 quadrillion dollars.
10,000. Quadrillion. That number doesn't even make sense.
It's more than the entire global economy by many, many orders of magnitude. It contains enough iron and nickel to supply all of human demand for millions of years.
Millions of years from one asteroid.
So his point is, we don't have a resource scarcity problem. We have a gravity well problem. All the resources we could ever need are floating right there in our solar system.
But okay, let's say a private company, like one of Chris's startups from the vignette, actually pulls this off. They bring all that metal back to Earth. Wouldn't that just crash the global economy?
Yes. That's the point. Under capitalism, that's a complete disaster. If gold suddenly becomes as common as aluminum, the gold market collapses. The mining companies go bankrupt. It triggers a financial crisis.
But under a different system.
Under fully automated luxury communism, that's a triumph. It means we have effectively infinite building materials. It means the entire concept of resource scarcity is obsolete.
So it creates this, what he calls an economic glitch. Capitalism just breaks down because its whole operating system is based on scarcity, and it can't handle radical abundance.
Precisely. You can't make a profit on free energy, free labor, and infinite gold. And Bastani argues that the closer we get to this post-scarcity reality, the more capitalism will have to create artificial barriers to keep prices high.
Like what?
Intellectual property laws, patents, corporate monopolies, rent-seeking behavior. The system will fight to keep things scarce, even when technology is making them abundant. And that's where the political struggle comes in.
So we have the engine, we have the logic of the third disruption, but what does the car actually look like? How do we live in this world? Bastani gives us a kind of toolkit of concepts, and I want to spend some time on these because this is where the theory hits the road.
Let's open the toolkit. What's the first tool that stands out to you?
Universal Basic Services, or UBS. Now, usually when people talk about automation taking jobs, the solution you always hear is Universal Basic Income, UBI.
Right. Andrew Yang ran a whole presidential campaign on it in the U.S. Just give everyone a check for, say, $1,000 a month.
And Bastani hates UBI. He thinks it's a terrible idea. Why?
Because he thinks it's a trap. It's a neoliberal solution to a post-capitalist problem. If you give everyone an extra $1,000 in a market where housing, healthcare, transport are all still privatized commodities, what happens?
My landlord knows I have an extra $1,000, so my rent goes up by $1,000.
Exactly. The money just gets immediately hoovered up by landlords, by Amazon, by insurance companies. It just becomes a massive subsidy for the existing rentier class.
So what's his alternative? UBS.
Universal Basic Services. The idea is simple. Don't give people cash to buy the things they need. Give them the stuff they need directly for free. Decommodify the absolute necessities of life.
So we're talking free housing, free public transport, free education from pre-K to PhD, free internet access.
Yes. He uses the model of the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, which provides healthcare free at the point of use. He's basically saying, let's have an NHS for everything. It's what he calls the social wage.
And he gives a great small-scale example, the Freedom Pass in London.
Yeah, where senior citizens get to ride the bus and the tube for free. He just asks a simple question, why not extend that to everyone?
Especially if the buses are electric, powered by virtually free solar energy, and eventually driven by AI. The marginal cost of one more person getting on the bus is practically zero.
Right. And if your rent is covered, your transport is free, your healthcare and education are free, and your internet is free.
Yeah.
You don't need a high-paying job to have a high quality of life. It fundamentally decouples survival from employment.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's pull another tool out of the kit. This one addresses the food issue, which is also a huge climate issue. You can't just 3D print a steak.
Yeah.
Or can you? He talks about cellular agriculture.
This is so critical for his argument, because he knows that a politics based on telling people they can't have the things they like is a political loser. The hair shirt green approach of telling everyone to go vegan is just not going to win a majority.
I can confirm. I tried going vegan. I lasted 3 weeks.
Exactly. Most people like meat. So cellular agriculture offers a way out. And to be clear, this is not a plant-based burger like an Impossible Burger.
Sure, it's not a veggie burger.
It's actual biological animal meat. It's just grown from a small sample of animal cells in a bioreactor, a bit like brewing beer. No animal has to be slaughtered.
And he tells the story of the very first lab-grown burger, which was presented in 2013. It was funded by Sergey Brin from Google. And do you remember the price tag?
It was something insane, right? Like over $300,000.
$325,000 for one burger patty, which is a little pricey for lunch.
Just a bit. But this is where the exponential curve kicks in again. That's the key pattern. By 2015, just 2 years later, the same company had gotten the cost down to around $11.
That is a cost collapse that rivals computer chips. It's incredible.
And Bastani argues that very soon, maybe even by the time people are listening to this, lab-grown meat will be cheaper than slaughtered meat.
And it's better in so many ways. No antibiotics, no E. coli outbreaks, no deforestation for cattle grazing, no methane emissions from cow burps, which is a huge driver of climate change.
It allows us to rewild the vast tracts of land currently used for agriculture. It solves a massive ecological crisis without requiring sacrifice or austerity. It's literal luxury for all. Champagne socialism becomes a reality.
Okay, I want to hit one more concept from this toolkit because it's the most philosophical and maybe the most unsettling: peak human.
Yes, the horse analogy. This really haunts the whole book.
Talk us through it. The Great Manure Crisis of 1894.
Right. It sounds funny, but it was a real urban planning conference. In 1894, planners in London looked at the growth of the city's population and therefore the horse population, and they made a projection.
Yeah.
They predicted that by the 1940s, the streets of London would be buried 9 feet deep in horse manure. They couldn't imagine a modern city without the horse. The horse was the engine of everything: transport, logistics, agriculture.
And then just a few years later, the automobile arrived, and the problem just vanished.
Problem solved. But let's look at it from the horse's perspective. We hit peak horse in the global economy around 1915. After that, horses were no longer the primary engine of labor, and their population collapsed. They became obsolete.
And Bastani's argument is that we are now at peak human.
We are the horses. For all of history, human labor, our muscle and our brains, has been the primary engine of the economy. But now the internal combustion engine of our era AI and advanced robotics is rolling off the assembly line.
So the terrifying question is, what happens to the horses when they're no longer needed to pull the carts?
In a purely capitalist system, if you can't sell your labor, you have no economic value. You're sent to the glue factory. Bastani is arguing that we need to build a political system that ensures we aren't sent to the glue factory, but instead, we're all put out to a luxurious pasture to enjoy our lives.
To become the driver of the car, not the animal pulling it.
Precisely. To be the masters of the technology, not its servants, and not its surplus byproduct.
This all brings us to the aha moment of this deep dive. How do we wrap our heads around the incredible speed of this change? Because honestly, I look out my window and I don't see fully automated luxury communism. I see potholes and traffic.
And this is where Bastani uses a classic, powerful analogy to explain why the future can feel like it's hitting us all at once. The story of the rice on the chessboard.
I love this one. It's an old fable.
It's an old fable. An emperor in, depending on the story, India or China, is so impressed with the inventor of chess that he grants him any wish.
And the inventor asks for a seemingly humble reward.
He says, "Your Majesty, just give me 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, 2 grains on the second square, 4 on the third, 8 on the fourth, and just keep doubling it for all 64 squares."
And the emperor laughs. He thinks, what an idiot. I'll take that deal in a heartbeat.
Right. Because for the first row, it's nothing, a handful of rice. Even halfway through the board on square 32, it's a big pile, but it's manageable. It's a few billion grains. But exponential growth is deeply deceptive. It stays low for a very long time, and then it goes vertical.
It's the second half of the chessboard where things get insane.
That is Bastani's entire point. We are now on the second half of the chessboard with our key technologies. We have been doubling computing power, solar efficiency, and gene sequencing capability for decades. We are now hitting the squares where the numbers become astronomical.
The pile of rice becomes bigger than Mount Everest.
That's why things feel so chaotic and why the world seems to be changing so fast. We are transitioning from the flat part of the exponential curve to the vertical wall.
And that leads to what I think is the mic drop quote of the whole book. Bastani writes, quite simply, "The robots are coming for our jobs. Let them."
I love that line, the defiance in it. It takes this huge source of modern anxiety and turns it into a demand.
Let them.
There's another great line, too. Communism is luxurious, or it isn't communism.
What do you think he means by that?
He's directly attacking the 20th century image of communism as this gray, austere, breadline ideology. He's trying to reclaim the idea of the good life, of abundance and decadence, from the political right. He's saying the goal of the left shouldn't be about sharing misery equally. It should be about democratizing luxury.
It's a powerful, compelling vision.
Yep.
And you knew there was a but coming.
I did.
We have to be the adults in the room for a moment. We need to put on our critical hats here. Because as much as I want to believe this, as I read it, I hear the Star Trek music swelling in my head, but then I remember who actually owns all this technology right now.
And this is the giant trillion-dollar elephant in the room. We can call it the Jeff Bezos problem. Yeah.
Bastani sometimes talks as if the technology itself has this innate political direction, as if it naturally leads to this communist outcome. But right now, the people building the rockets, the AI, the robot factories are the richest men in human history.
So why on earth would they just hand the keys to the kingdom over to the rest of us?
Exactly. It seems naive.
And this is the central critique you'll hear from other political theorists, like Elaine Graham Lee, for instance. They accuse Bastani of technological determinism.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms? He thinks the tech does the political work for us.
Basically, yeah. It's the idea that a technology on its own causes a certain social outcome, like the printing press caused the Reformation or the internet caused democracy.
That's not how it works.
History shows that technology is a tool, and it generally reinforces the power of whoever owns and controls it. If Jeff Bezos owns the army of delivery drones and warehouse robots, he doesn't need to share the abundance. He can just build a bigger wall around his compound and charge us more for Prime.
So how does Bastani answer this? How do we get from here to there?
This is, I think, the weakest part of the book. He talks about building a political movement around luxury populism and about municipal protectionism, cities taking back control of their own services, like the Preston model in the UK.
But that feels a bit light. It feels like bringing a municipal bus to a fight with a SpaceX rocket.
It feels like reformism masquerading as revolution, as one critic put it. The book lacks a robust theory of power and struggle. He's a bit vague on the how. He seems to rely on the idea that the zero marginal cost dynamic will just make capitalism impossible to sustain, that it will sort of dissolve on its own.
Which seems unlikely.
Capitalism is incredibly good at adapting. Look at music. Music became a zero marginal cost product with the MP3. Did that lead to luxury communism for musicians?
No, it led to Spotify.
It led to Spotify.
Yeah.
Capitalism found a way to enclose that abundance and turn it into a rental stream. So we might not get automated barbarism or luxury communism. We might just end up in rentier capitalism, where we pay a subscription fee for everything, our house, our food, our transport, our very existence, to a handful of tech monopolies.
That sounds more like an episode of Black Mirror than Star Trek.
It's a real danger. And there's another major critique we have to take seriously from an environmental perspective.
Right, this idea of extreme supply.
Bastani is, at his core, an accelerationist. He wants to power through our problems with more tech, more energy, more production, but critics point to something called the Jevons paradox.
Remind me what that is again.
It's the observation, going back to the 19th century, that as technology increases the efficiency with which a resource is used, the total consumption of that resource often increases rather than decreases.
So when cars got more fuel efficient, people didn't use less gas, they just drove more.
Exactly. So if energy becomes virtually free, will we use it wisely to rewild the planet? Or will we just use it to power massive server farms for crypto mining, heat our swimming pools all winter, and consume ever-increasing amounts of material goods that still require mining and produce waste?
Yeah, extreme supply sounds fantastic until you remember that all those solar panels and batteries require lithium and other rare earth metals. And mining them, even if it's done by robots, destroys ecosystems here on Earth.
And the space mining, the asteroid stuff, that's still a theory. It's not a proven technology. So if we bet the future of the planet on asteroid gold that never arrives, we are in deep, deep trouble.
Critics would say it's a form of magical thinking.
It can be a sort of technological deus ex machina that distracts us from the hard political work of redistribution that we could be doing right now. We don't need asteroid gold to end poverty. We just need to tax the wealthy and build a proper welfare state.
It's the ultimate tech bro temptation, isn't it? Don't worry about inequality. My amazing new Appear rocket will fix it all eventually.
But, and this is a big but, and I think this is where the book really succeeds despite all these valid criticisms, Bastani breaks the mental paralysis of capitalist realism.
It scratches the itch we started with.
It absolutely does. Even if you don't buy the whole package, even if you think asteroid mining is a fantasy, he forces you to ask the fundamental question. Why are we accepting scarcity in an age of potential abundance? Why are we accepting that the future must be worse than the past?
It reclaims the future as a destination, as a place we might actually want to live in, instead of just a disaster we're trying to manage.
And it challenges the listener. It challenges you, right now, to rethink your own value in a world without work.
That's the really scary part, isn't it? If I'm not my job title, who am I?
We are so profoundly conditioned to define ourselves by our labor. I am a teacher. I am a software engineer. I am a plumber. If the robots and the AIs take over the task, do you lose your identity? Or are you finally free to discover who you are outside of your economic function?
And Bastoni's answer is clear. He says we should demand the latter. We should demand a life of what he calls self-authorship.
The freedom to spend your days gardening or writing poetry or caring for your community or playing video games or exploring the stars, whatever gives your life meaning.
It's a complete shift from working to live to just living.
It's a monumental vision.
So here's the final thought for you to chew on. We are, all of us, currently like those horses in 1900. We can't really imagine a world where we aren't pulling the cart in some way. But the engine is already built. It's idling in the driveway. And the question is, are we going to let the driver leave us behind in the dust? Or are we going to find a way to grab the wheel?
The future is already here. It's just unequally distributed.
Keep questioning the scarcity.
And have the courage to demand the luxury.
Until next time on Doctorates of the Absurd.